Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Mild-mannered cartridges. That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, ballistics, tactics, the right way with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world experience, military, law enforcement, competition shooting, hunting, and so on. Bio in the show notes. With that, let's talk about some mild-mannered cartridges. Cartridges that get the job done, but they're just really mild. Now I'm going to limit this to like center fire cartridges. Obviously many of the rimfires, if not all the rimfires, are very mild-mannered. But I'm talking center fire cartridges here. Let's start off with one of the cartridges that started it all, the 7x57 Mauser. Now to give credit where it's due, I'll probably be looking throughout this episode in my old Hornady reloading manual. It was just within reach on the bed, so I grabbed it. 1892. 1892. And we faced off against it, we meaning like America and Teddy Roosevelt in Cuba against the Spanish in 1898. It was already in war in 1898. Think about 1892. Think about the other stuff around back then. This cartridge kind of inspired so many other cartridges. A lot of the tree of cartridges we have today, modern Spitzer bottlenecked smokeless powder cartridges, can kind of find their way back to at some point in the 7x57 Mauser. Kind of like the few degrees of separation game. Now there was probably some prototype before it or some other country that had something they were working on, but as far as mass adopted, well known, this is like the first that I'm aware of bottlenecked Spitzer smokeless powder cartridge, a 7x57 Mauser. Oh, okay, well how could a cartridge from 1892 possibly still be a decent, relevant cartridge today? Well, per the reloading manual, and there are many, many loads out there, but lists 100 grain bullets up into the 3100 feet a second, 120 grain bullets in the 280, so 2800 feet per second, which is fantastic. It lists 154 grain bullets at 2500. Those are good numbers. If you're talking deer or even larger sometimes, there is nothing wrong with a 7x57 Mauser. It's mild-mannered, it doesn't have a lot of recoil. It kind of lives in this weird in-between world of long action, short action, because it predates that American standardization. It far predates the 30-06. In fact, it was our inspiration for the 30-06, and it predates the 308 by a long shot. So it kind of lives outside that realm, but there are a lot of Mausers chambered in that rifle. And a lot of them have been modernized, and a lot of newer ones have been made. A lot of other rifles have been made in it. Also has another cool name, I believe the 275 Rigby. Same cartridge, different name. Maybe because of some of the animosity in the 20th century between the English, the British, and the Germans. Maybe they just didn't want to stamp Mauser on their stuff, or maybe there was some other reason. But the 7x57 Mauser can get the job done. You're talking about it's taken, I think, more elephants than many other cartridges because it's been around a long time. So it can get the job done. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a good mild-mannered cartridge. It has a wide array of loads you can load for it and loads you can get it in because it's been around so long. PSA, if you blow yourself up or somebody else up with your gun putting the wrong ammo in there that it's not rated for, that's your fault, not my fault. But some of the really old turn-of-the-century Mausers, which are still out there because they were made so well, you probably don't want to load super hot and put modern, hotter loaded 7x57 Mauser in there. But it's a great cartridge. Let's talk about one of its wildcats, shall we, since we're jumping around. How about the 257 Roberts? I believe it is a neck-down 7x57 225 caliber. And just confirming in the Hornady manual, it is in fact, that is what it says. You may also see 257 Roberts plus P. Again, make sure your gun is rated for your stuff. And this is me stepping in here. Some of the great crossover cartridges as far as varmints and deer size game are the 6mm and 25s, and this one is no different. And this one, because it's 25 caliber, using a little bit smaller bullets, or you can, it should fit into a lot of, I don't know about every, but a lot of short actions. I've never owned this cartridge. It is very intriguing to me. I like mild-mannered cartridges. I've never owned a 25. I tend towards the 6mm. I love the 243. I think it's one of the best, not just youth deer cartridges or woman deer cartridges. I think it's one of the best deer cartridges, antelope cartridges of all time. I don't see why the 257 Roberts wouldn't be just as good. It's a fantastic cartridge. Some numbers, it lists a 60 grain bullet at 3,800 feet a second. It lists a 75 grain bullet at 3,500 feet a second. That's a lot more impressive than I was thinking in my head. And it lists an 87 grain at 3,300. If you want to bump up to 100, you're still at 3,100, and a 117 at 29. Those numbers that's no slouch. Those are fantastic numbers, and a very mild-mannered, mild recoiling cartridge. Like anything else, rifle fit matters, rifle weight matters, not mounting the scope too close to your face matters, right? A lot of that stuff matters, but a mild-mannered cartridge that, if you're hunting deer-sized animals and down, it's got impressive numbers. If you're still one of the old school, method practitioners of max point blank range and you want a mild-mannered cartridge, this is really nice. Going back to a Mauser cartridge, the 6.5x55 Swede. This may be one of the original mild-mannered cartridges. It's not quite as old as the 7x57. I believe 1898 in my head. Doesn't say it here in the manual. You might want to double check that. Oh, it does. 1896 rifles, but it doesn't say when it was made. I thought it was 1898. Anyway, 1800s. This cartridge has a reputation for punching well above its weight class. The 6.5x55 Swedish Mauser. Same goes, old rifles don't use high pressure ammo, and a lot of American made ammo is kind of powder puff loaded down in case, so you don't put it in one of the really old rifles and blow yourself up. But you can get some more modern loaded ammo if you don't reload, and you can load it up fairly hot. Just numbers out of this manual. It lists a 100 grain bullet at 3,200 feet a second, and it lists a 129 grain at 2,700 feet per second. Goes all the way up to a 160 at 2,300 feet per second. Those are good numbers. And this has a reputation. Now, Scandinavian mooses, I understand it, are not as big as like Alaskan moose, but this cartridge has taken a lot of them. This cartridge was using those high sectional density numbers and heavy for caliber bullets way before, we started doing it here with the 260 Remington and now the 6.5 Creedmoor. This is the OG of that. If you want a cartridge with a little bit more character, a little bit more unique, still mild-mannered, and you just like the 6.5 better than the other ones we've heretofore talked about, you want to go a little bit in the middle of the 7x57 and the 257 Roberts, the 6.5x55 Swede, or perhaps it should be called the 6.5x55 Scandinavian, as I believe it was used by more countries than just Sweden, but a very mild-mannered cartridge. There were obviously older Swedish Mausers chambered in it, and there are modern rifles still being chambered in it. Now, I briefly mentioned a 260 Remington. That's a 308 neck down to 6.5. I'm going to kind of skip over it because the whole world kind of has skipped over it. Not that it's not a good cartridge. It was one of the kind of cool ones when I was growing up. But really today, as much as you might hate the 6.5 Creedmoor, I'm going to put it on the list because it is a modern, mild-mannered cartridge. It didn't get to be so prevalent because it's a bad cartridge. Also, It's not great at long range because it's super flat shooting or a Magnum or super powerful. It did it because it's mild, it's predictable, it's got some good case geometry. You can shoot longer, heavier bullets in it if you want, and I am going to put it on the list. I believe it came out when I got this manual that same year or around that same year. Would have been in the aughts. So it's not a new cartridge at this point. It's obviously not as old as a 7x57 Mauser, but it's getting there and it's become a staple. If you go into most gun stores, most places that sell centerfire rifle ammo, they're going to have 6.5 Creedmoor. It's a good cartridge. I have one, and not for the reason that I can sit there and play with like a fidget spinner for men and dial a giant scope or whatever. I have it in a light, handy mountain rifle, a light, handy Kimber Adirondack that weighs 4-point-something pounds for like hardcore backcountry hunting or guiding. I've got a bunch of other stuff that I'm concerned about, and I've got it in 6.5 Creedmoor. I wouldn't want it in a heavier air recoiling cartridge than that lighter rifle in a 4-pound rifle, because this is a mild-mannered cartridge. If you're getting a really light rifle, you might want to look at it. I know a lot of people want the biggest, highest, most BCNist bullet there is out there, but I tend to like the 120-ish grain bullets in my 6.5 Creedmoor. But I will give you, it lists a 95 grain at 3,200, and it lists a 120 to 123 grain at 3,000, a 129 at 2,900, and it lists a 160 at 2,550. You might be, if you remember the numbers we talked about with some of the other older Mauser cartridges, you might be thinking, well, those numbers aren't any hotter than, or any more powerful, really, not out of the ballpark of those older cartridges we talked about. And you're right. Again, this cartridge didn't become prevalent because it was a powerhouse. It's not. It is mild-mannered. That's why it's on today's list. It's a mild-mannered cartridge that can get the job done. And if you want a modern turnkey solution available in a ton of rifles, and you want a mild-mannered cartridge, the 6.5 Creedmoor is kind of it. Now, let me throw in one of ours. I didn't really put in my initial list any 30 calibers on there, because to me 30 calibers is like a full powered rifle, not really mild mannered. But you know what, I was wrong. The 30-30 is kind of America's original mild mannered cartridge. 1895. Now this is not going to be as good as, in my opinion, a 7x57 Mauser for like an all-around hunting cartridge. But settle down, it's a good cartridge. I like it. Many people like it. It is about as American. Well, it's more American than apple pie, because I think apple pie we got from somewhere in Europe. I want to say Germany, but I could be wrong about that. And Germans, not Germans, apples are actually from Kazakhstan. So this is about as American as Mayhaw jelly or persimmon wine or whatever is very American. But the 30-30 Winchester, this is really mild-mannered. Now, it doesn't generally, unless you hand-load it for a bolt action, not a tube-fed rifle, you're not going to really get away with pointed bullets unless you used a lever revolution, however they pronounce it. And even then, they're not stellar. But the 30-30 has been around a long time, and it is a very mild-mannered cartridge. Lists a 100 grain, which you're probably not going to find in a factory load, at 2,700, a 110 grain at 2,600, a 150 grain at 2,300, and a 170 at 2,200. Those are mild numbers. It's a mild-mannered cartridge, even in a light, handy Winchester 94 or a heavier, I believe, 336. It's going to be mild. And it's a great cartridge. It's a versatile cartridge. It's a good closer in, and by closer in I mean like 150 yards in him, which will take care of most, despite what the media and the gun tube glitterati would have you believe, will handle most shots for most people in North America on deer size game. Most deer are shot inside 150 yards. It's a good, capable, mild-mannered cartridge, and if you want a 30 and you want America, then the 30-30 is a really mild-mannered cartridge. Now, these have all been centerfire rifle cartridges. I do want to throw in a couple of others. The 410 bore, not actually a gauge, it's a bore. Most other shotguns are a gauge, which is an entirely different unit of measurement, which I'm not going to get into. And the 410 bore, .410, it's actually more like a 45, as many guns will interchange it with the 45 long Colt, Again, don't do that unless your gun is rated for that. But it's a small, mild-mannered shotgun cartridge, and it is very capable. My very first gun ever was a 410 bolt-action shotgun. I ran all over the woods doing my best to put meat on the table with that gun. The 410 is a very mild-mannered cartridge for a shotgun. Most shotguns, are even a 20 gauge in a lightweight gun, can be fairly heavy recoiling. Now, it's not unmanageable, but when I later got a 20 gauge single shot shotgun, I still think the 20 gauge single shots are fairly high recoil for a very young shooter. For a grown man, they're not bad, but for a very young shooter, those are going to recoil more than some of the centerfire rifles we talked about. The 410 is kind of the mild-mannered. Now, there is like a 28 gauge, but it's fairly obscure. The 410 is mainstream. Most places that sell shotgun are going to have some kind of 410 ammo. It's very mild-mannered. It's nowhere near as good as for shooting birds out of the air. It can be done, yeah. But for something like squirrels and rabbits, where you're maybe taking a stationary shot, where the shots aren't as challenging, the 410 is fantastic for that. For a survival gun where you want to be able to carry more ammo for less weight, it's great for that. It's a good, mild-mannered shotgun cartridge. And it comes in, you can get slugs in it. You can get Foster slugs, Bernanke slugs. You can get buckshot. I think like a real classic one is 5 pellets of triple alt buck, which is nothing to sneeze at. Obviously, your birdshot's your number 6s for squirrels and rabbits we talked about. Obviously, lighter stuff for doves and quail and things like that. It is a great little mild-mannered shotgun cartridge. And the next one, a handgun cartridge, the 9mm. The 9mm is a great cartridge, and you can get mad at that, but I'm not going to apologize for saying it. Other cartridges have been adopted by not just us and NATO, but it started out as a German cartridge way back before Nazis were ever a thing, and it's not only used by the Germans, but by us and by NATO as a whole, and by Russia. Like, it's used by just about everybody. Hard-pressed to find a country that didn't use 9mm. And one of the reasons is it's mild-mannered. There are other handgun rounds that are more effective round per round, with 357 Zig, 10mm. But getting multiple rapid hits on target with a handgun is often more important than round per round effectiveness. Because any handgun round, to go up to the ridiculous, like a 500 Smith & Wesson, any of them are going to be less than ideal and not great at stopping people. So getting multiple hits on target, where shot placement is important, getting multiple hits on multiple targets is important. 9mm kind of rules, and it has for a long time. Thankfully, we got over that whole debacle of thinking that 40 was a good idea. And why did 9 beat out over the 40? Because it's more mild-mannered. It's in mild-mannered cartridges that's proven itself very capable. Again, it's not the most capable, I'll be honest and say that, but it is, I think, probably the best balanced cartridge of mild-mannered and capable. So anyway, with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mild-Mannered Cartridges. I hope that you will consider becoming a patron. Hopefully we'll live long enough one day to see our swords beaten into plowshares in our lifetime. We're called to watch and be ready, but Jesus also said, "Let he who has no sword sell his garment and buy one." And with that, I'm going to roll out here with the tactical verse of the day from the book of Revelation. "These are the ones who come out of the great tribulation and washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will dwell among them. They shall neither hunger any more nor thirst any more, and the sun shall not strike them, nor any heat. For the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne will shepherd them, and lead them to living fountains of water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes."